What if I told you the most magical thing in your garden used to live in your junk drawer? These aren't AI fantasies or Pinterest clickbait. These are real, soulful projects made from real objects, the kind sitting unused in your kitchen right now. This video is packed with time-stamped DIY ideas, so skip to what speaks to you. And if something sparks a thought, tell me in the comments. Welcome to Arkan Aesthetic Studio, where discarded objects are given a second life, not just as decor, but as emotion, beauty, and meaning. Maybe to you, I'm just another face on a screen. But this is real. When you subscribe, you're helping more than a channel grow. You're keeping a dream alive, for a small family, one click at a time. Thank you for being here. And thank you for seeing us. One, vintage bird feeders. Once, they were nothing special. A chipped teacup, a few rusted cans, a lantern no longer lit. Forgotten, tucked away at the back of kitchen cabinets or collecting dust in the shed. But look again. Under soft daylight and surrounded by lavender, a porcelain teacup now becomes a sanctuary, not for tea, but for a robin. The cup no longer serves a table, but the sky. The driftwood beneath it cradles the moment like it knew this was its second life. You don't need a garden full of perfect things. You need one object, repurposed with love. Not far away, painted tuna cans dangle from a rusty wire frame. They clink softly with the wind, turning sunlight into a carousel of color and shadow. Birds visit, not because it's expensive or ornate, but because it's honest. This chandelier wasn't bought. It was imagined. It was built from the belief that beauty can come from what we throw away. And then there's the lantern. Once burning with fire, now glowing with presence. Inside sits a simple teacup filled with seed, gently swinging as a sparrow pauses to feed. The ivy wraps around the branch above it. Wildflowers nod quietly below. There's no paint here, no polish. Just weathered metal, real light, and purpose returned. This is the quiet magic of reuse. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It tells the story of care, of noticing, of giving new life to what no longer had one. And in doing so, it invites us to ask, what else are we overlooking that's waiting to become something beautiful? Two, wind chimes. There's something magical about the sound of metal in the wind. Not loud, not urgent, just a quiet echo that feels like memory. In one corner of a sunlit garden, spoons and forks, no longer needed at the table, gently sway above a bed of mint and rosemary. Each piece, mismatched and time-worn, reflects the morning light like tiny bells made of silver and story. They chime with every breeze, as if whispering recipes from kitchens that no longer exist. And nearby, a different kind of music waits to be noticed. A rolling pin once used for bread, now strung with keys, buttons, and soda tabs. Hung on a garden gate between golden marigolds, it doesn't try to be perfect. It swings, creaks, and clinks, joyfully honest, full of texture and time. A butterfly pauses on its handle, not to feed, not to rest, but perhaps to listen. Then there's the coat hanger. Simple, wooden, curved by use. Now it holds a curtain of silverware and beads, catching both light and sound. Each breeze turns it into a gentle percussion of forgotten cutlery, rising above the flowers like a lullaby for the earth. This is what happens when we stop throwing things away and start asking them what else they could become. Not everything beautiful must begin as something new. Sometimes the most tender things begin as leftovers, as extras, and with a bit of string, patience, and imagination. They come back to life, not just as decorations, but as music in the air. Three Teacup mushroom garden stakes. What if I told you that these delicate garden mushrooms were once teacups? In the early hush of morning, where dew gathers gently on leaves and everything feels softer, pastel porcelain blooms rise from the earth. Each mushroom along this pebble path was once a forgotten teacup, now flipped upside down and lovingly transformed. Painted in soft pinks, pale blues, mint greens, some sprinkled with polka dots, others trimmed with vintage florals. They rest atop thin wooden dowels, nestled between creeping violets and thyme. The sunlight dances across their glossy glaze, turning something simple into something utterly spellbinding. These aren't just ornaments. They are memories given shape, grandmother's china, chipped but cherished, now part of a living fairy tale under the open sky. With just a bit of paint, a sealer, and patience, you too can create your own path of wonder, one mushroom at a time. Just a few steps away, under a bed of ferns and flanked by marigolds, another cluster springs to life. Bold red toadstools with charming white spots. Made from enamel teacups, perhaps once used for roadside camping or tucked in picnic baskets, now reborn as cheerful fairy fungi. Slightly rusted edges and tiny chips don't take away from their beauty, they add to it. They tell a story of past lives, repurposed with joy. Look closely and you might catch a frog resting in their shade, as if they too believe in the illusion. These miniature toadstools invite the wild things to stay. And then, deeper still into the woodland border, where light filters through leaves like soft whispers, a quieter magic awaits. Earth-toned teacups painted in mossy greens, bark browns, and cracked ivory stand tall like ancient forest fungi. Some have been textured with lichen-like motifs. Others bear real cracks that mimic the fragile strength of nature herself. Set on bamboo stalks, they almost disappear among hostas and fallen petals. Morning light kisses their surfaces, revealing fine details you'd miss if you weren't still enough to notice. These fairy garden mushrooms aren't bought. They are made. They're imagined. And they begin not with expensive supplies, but with a drawer full of mismatched dishes, a few dowels, and a willingness to see the magic in the mundane. So next time you find an old teacup, don't throw it away. Let it bloom. Let it become something quiet and beautiful in the garden. A tiny, handmade echo of wonder. Four Fairy Garden Miniatures. In a quiet corner of the garden, nestled in moss and memory, stands a little house. But look closer, Its walls are bark, its roof made from sun-aged shingles of tree bark, and its windows glint with bottle caps rimmed in rusted silver. Around it, wine corks pose as stools, surrounding a wooden slice table, a gathering place for tiny stories. The fence? Just old twigs tied with humble thread. This is no ordinary dwelling. It's a fairy cottage born from the forgotten. Proof that even the most ordinary cast-offs can find second life in wonder. To create something similar, start by collecting what nature and your kitchen already offer. Bark, corks, caps, sticks. Let the forms guide the structure. Glue becomes mortar. Imagination becomes blueprint. This is slow art, gentle art, where perfection is not the goal, story is. Then there's the magic jar, resting like a secret on a sun-warmed bench. What once held preserves now preserves something else. A little world inside. Red-capped mushrooms peek from beds of moss. Pebbles form winding trails. A cork swing dangles from a branch. And there, on a tiny swing made from twine and hope, sits a fairy, made of beads, thread, and belief. You don't need sculpting tools or rare supplies. Just patience, clear glue, a steady hand, and the desire to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. And finally, beneath the violet blooms, a table is set. A tea party in miniature. The table itself is a scallop shell, iridescent in the sun. The chairs? Bottle caps, painted and propped on little twigs. Each cup is no taller than a fingertip, resting on napkins torn from old cloth scraps. In the center, a book lies open. One can almost hear the rustle of its tiny paper leaves. Here's a quiet reminder. Beauty doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. That's the real secret of fairy garden art. So next time you're about to toss a bottle cap or wine cork, pause. Consider what it might become. Not trash, but treasure. Not waste, but wonder. Let your hands slow down. Let your eyes soften. And build something small that makes the world feel big again. Five, mobiles and spinners. Beneath the whisper of cherry blossoms, something delicate stirs, a soft clinking in the breeze, like a lullaby remembered. A mobile, not bought, but born, crafted from forgotten treasures. A lone earring, a chipped charm, a strand of beads long tucked away. Once worn close to the heart, now they dangle together in sunlight, telling stories no longer spoken but gently swayed in the wind. There is magic in what we already have. A circle of wire, a piece of jewelry no longer perfect, a little time on a quiet afternoon. These are all you need. The sunlight will do the rest, casting shadows on moss and stone as if memories themselves are dancing. Not far from this twinkling spinner, above the soft green bed of mint and thyme, another story sways. Here, an old embroidery hoop, its threadbare legacy reimagined, holds tea strainers and wooden buttons like they were always meant for the sky. There's no symmetry, no shine polished to perfection, only the beautiful texture of age and use. The kind of beauty that needs no explanation. Just wind, just light. And then, through a path scattered with marigold petals, another mobile sways, brass keys chiming like whispered secrets. Each one, once a keeper of doors and drawers and days gone by, now sings in the company of basil and sun. Wrapped in twine and strung with chain, it becomes a quiet hymn of transformation, suspended above life that grows wild and unafraid below. These pieces do not demand new things. They ask you to remember what you already have. A key, a button, a tea ball, Let your fingers find what your heart once set aside, and give it space to breathe again. Let it turn with the seasons. Let it sing in the wind. Let it remind you, beauty does not fade, it changes shape. Six, Mosaic Planters. Sometimes, beauty is simply the art of noticing. The art of seeing not just what something is, but what it could be. Beneath a canopy of ordinary afternoons, forgotten drawers rest quietly in attics and sheds, some chipped, some cracked, all overlooked. But with a little tenderness and a handful of imagination, even a discarded drawer can blossom into something magical. Let's begin with the first scene. A humble wooden drawer, lovingly reborn. Its surface now sings with a mosaic of blue and white porcelain shards, collected from broken plates and teacups that once held stories around dinner tables. Some pieces still show floral motifs, delicate brushwork now framed by grout and grain. Inside, succulents like echeveria and jade rise from the soil like silent little sculptures, their forms both soft and geometric. The whole planter feels like a memory box, alive with morning light, earthy textures, and the quiet joy of reuse. Creating something like this doesn't require perfection, only intention. Gather chipped ceramics that speak to you. Break them gently, perhaps wrapped in a towel, and place each fragment as if building a little poem from porcelain. Let the flaws remain. They're the most honest parts. Now imagine a burst of color on a sun-warmed bench. Orange, green, turquoise tiles gleam like candy against a wooden drawer. Inside, marigolds rise proudly, their vibrant petals framed by moss and morning dew. This isn't just a planter, it's a celebration. A riot of broken color turned whole again. The juxtaposition of shiny tiles and aged wood makes it even more delightful. And nearby, a watering can leans in as if eager to help. When working with colored tile fragments, play with contrast. Let sharp edges meet soft flowers. Try mismatched colors. The brighter and more varied your pieces, the more alive your planter will feel, like stained glass in the garden. And then, there's serenity. A quiet drawer painted in worn beige, its knobs weathered like sea stones, now holds a miniature desert. Cacti grow slowly from white gravel, tiny spines reaching skyward under a soft amber light. The tiles, muted tones of terracotta, rust, and sand, add warmth without noise. This piece doesn't shout. It whispers. It invites you to pause, to breathe. This kind of planter is perfect for spaces that crave stillness. Use soft earth tones, matte textures, and simple symmetry. Surround your tiny cacti with polished pebbles or fine sand, and let the drawer speak for itself. Because here's the truth, fairy garden art isn't about fairies at all. It's about transformation, about seeing the magic that lingers in the overlooked. A broken teacup, a lonely drawer, a handful of discarded tiles. They're not trash. They're just waiting for someone to see them again. And maybe that someone is you. Seven, reclaimed planters. In a quiet corner of the garden, where light slips through leaves like whispered secrets, stands a faded blue chair. Its wooden arms are smooth from time and touch, its paint flaked like stories peeling away. But the seat, once empty, is now a cradle of life. A rusted wire basket holds ivy that spills over like laughter, mingling with the velvet purples of blooming petunias and the lively green of sweet potato vines. The vines reach down, eager, playful, like nature reclaiming a forgotten throne. And that's just it. What was once a worn-out chair is now a fairy's resting nook. To make your own? Seek out an old chair with a missing or removed seat, tuck in a wire basket or liner, and fill it with trailing greens and bold blooms. The more worn, the more charm it holds. Let imperfection lead the way. Not far from the chair, nestled in the soil like childhood dreams, are a pair of bright yellow rain boots. They stand at attention, muddy at the toes, kissed by rain and still dripping with stories from past puddles. But now, instead of feet, they hold pansies, cheerful faces in purple, white, and sunburst yellow. It's as if a garden spirit borrowed the boots to grow joy instead of walking through it. This whimsical reuse is not only beautiful, it's wonderfully practical. Rubber boots already have drainage and weather resistance built in. Just add soil and flowers, and suddenly, yesterday's outgrown shoes become today's magical centerpiece. If you have a pair that's no longer needed, don't toss them, plant them. Place them on a path, a step, or deep in a garden bed. Let their new story begin. And then, in the golden hush of late afternoon, we find something that glows from within. Hanging from a pergola beam by aging chains, an old metal colander swings gently. Its perforated sides scatter pinpricks of sunlight like dancing fireflies onto the wooden deck below. Inside, vivid red geraniums bloom in proud contrast to the rusted surface. Ivy trails downward, brushing the moss that cushions its base. It's weathered, it's worn, and yet, it might be the most magical of them all. A simple kitchen item, turned into a hanging garden lantern. To recreate it, all you need is an old colander, rust adds to the charm, and a sturdy hook. Fill it with trailing plants and bright flowers. If you place it where morning or evening light can shine through, you'll create a natural chandelier that no store-bought piece could ever replace. Eight, vertical gardens and succulent frames. Somewhere between memory and imagination, a frame once hung above a mantel, proudly housing a family portrait or a faded oil painting. Now, it carries something else entirely, a living story. In the first scene, we find that very frame, aged and softened by time, repurposed as a vertical succulent garden. The chicken wire backing, once used to keep chickens at bay, now cradles clusters of jade, echeveria, and sedum like a quilt stitched by nature herself. These rosettes bloom gently from a bed of moss, glowing in the soft embrace of sunlight. It's not just a picture anymore. It's a breathing canvas. A tip for dreamers, frames with depth work best, and succulents thrive when slightly tilted to allow water to drain. You're not just gardening, you're composing living poetry. Just beside that, imagine the quiet charm of a wooden crate wall. Once stacked in the back of a dusty grocer's store or tucked away in a wine cellar, these salvaged crates are now upright, filled with terracotta pots brimming with mint, thyme, and ivy. Some bear the scars of their journey, stenciled labels, nail holes, even a forgotten spider's web in a corner. But that's the beauty. Their imperfections ground them in the past, while the green tendrils of herbs reach towards sunlight and possibility. Practical magic lives here too. Attach crates with sturdy screws, stagger their heights for variety, and line the base with coconut fiber for a cleaner look. Vertical gardening doesn't need to be fancy. It just needs a bit of heart and a wall that wants to bloom. And then, There's the wine box, once home to clinking bottles aged in oak, now transformed into a fairy tale vignette. The front is open, like a stage, while the backdrop is a delicate mosaic of broken tiles. Green, cream, and clay, each shard telling its own story. Tucked inside the box, a plush nest of coconut fiber cradles plump succulents, their leaves gently brushed with lavender and sage. Seashells and glass beads glimmer like tiny treasures between them, whispering of beach days and stargazing. This is not a planter, it's a portal to another realm. If you're dreaming of trying this yourself, start small. Visit flea markets or ask friends for old crates or frames. Use dry moss and chicken wire for vertical plantings, or line the base with coconut husk to hold moisture for succulents. Let the shapes and cracks of your materials guide you. Don't fix the flaws, highlight them. These are not just recycled objects. They are reincarnated homes for living things. A gallery of greens and blossoms. A slow, deliberate return to the simple wonder of making something with your hands. And perhaps, as you step back and look at your creation, you'll feel it too. The quiet magic that lives in giving old things a new reason to be seen. Nine, stacked garden towers. What if I told you that the most enchanting garden sculptures begin not with something rare or expensive, but with what you almost threw away? In a quiet corner where sunlight weaves between leaves like golden thread, something magical stands tall. Once, these were just old colanders, worn, rust-speckled, each forgotten in the back of kitchen cupboards. But now, they rise in a whimsical bouquet tower, painted in cheerful hues of aqua, sunflower yellow, and berry red. Threaded through a central rod and stacked like nature's own celebration cake, each colander brims with moss and pansies. When light pours through their holes, it dances in lace patterns across the grass. A moment of joy, a monument to imagination. And believe it or not, all you need to begin is a few mismatched strainers and a bit of balance. If you're inspired to create something similar, here's a gentle tip. Drill a central hole in each colander, then slide them through a sturdy metal rod anchored into the ground. Fill each layer with lightweight soil, moss for moisture retention, and shallow-rooted flowers like pansies or violas. Let imperfections shine. Rust is character, dents are charm. That's the spirit of fairy gardening. In another nook, simplicity takes flight. A white salad spinner, yes, a salad spinner, now hangs gracefully from a pergola beam, cradling fragrant herbs. The thyme leans gently to the right, basil reaches upward, and mint spills over the edge like a green waterfall. Butterflies are drawn to its scent. The plastic basket, scuffed and stained from years of use, now finds a new life in the sun. To recreate this, just line the spinner with coconut fiber or breathable mesh. Then fill it with a mix of compost and potting soil. Herbs love well-drained containers, and this one breathes naturally through its holes. The bonus? When it rains, the spinner design ensures perfect drainage, and it swings ever so slightly in the breeze, like a little herb cradle for the wind. And then there's the quiet poetry of porcelain. Mismatched teacups, their rims chipped and gold accents faded, are stacked gently on a saucer base, creating a delicate totem among the wildflowers. Inside, tiny succulents bloom, tucked into moss like treasure in an old tale. Each piece tells a story, perhaps once held tea at grandmother's table, or rested forgotten on a dusty shelf. Now, they stand proudly in the garden, echoing fairy tales with every crack and curve. To build your own, use epoxy to secure the pieces into a steady tower. Succulents thrive in shallow spaces and need little water, making them perfect for this vintage display. And if you let a bit of soil spill over, let it. Mess makes it feel alive. In the end, these towers are more than just planters. They are reminders that even the overlooked, the cast-off, the imperfect, can rise into beauty when placed under the sun and touched by imagination. So next time you find a lonely colander, an old dish, or a plastic spinner in your hands, don't toss it. Pause, breathe, and picture what it could become in your garden of wonder. Rustic birdhouses. Once, these fragments of forgotten things sat unnoticed in corners of old homes and barns. Scraps of sun-bleached fence wood, chipped drawer knobs, and tins that once held sweet treats long gone. Weathered by time, softened by memory. But in the right hands, and with a little imagination, they were reborn into something deeply charming and quietly magical. Take, for instance, the first tiny home. A humble cottage made from mismatched planks salvaged from an old fence. The roof, stitched together with a tin sheet and crowned with a brass drawer knob, leans slightly with age. A crooked twig serves as the perch, inviting small birds to rest in the heart of a blooming apple grove. It doesn't scream perfection. Instead, it whispers stories of simpler times, of hands that made and mended. A second birdhouse swings gently from a tree branch wrapped in jute rope. At first glance, it might look like a quirky sculpture, but look closer. The roof is a patchwork quilt of old cookie tin lids, some rusty, some gleaming. A reclaimed drawer face forms the wall, and worn hinges run like a crooked spine along the side. Bees buzz nearby, drawn by wildflowers planted at its base. It's a living poem in wood and metal, swaying with the breeze of summer afternoons. Then, nestled low upon a mossy tree stump, stands what looks like a dwelling out of a fairy tale. A cottage built from driftwood and bark tiles, with a roof woven from moss and lichen. Its tiny door is framed with antique keyholes, each one holding a story long since locked away. Nearby, a wren pauses as if it's checking in for the night. This isn't just a birdhouse, it's a tiny portal into wonder. Ladder plant shelves. Sometimes, beauty is a memory reborn. What once helped hands reach rooftops or balance buckets of paint now leans humbly in the garden, cradling life, not labor. Weathered ladders, forgotten in sheds or cast out after decades of service, have become poetry in wood. With each worn step and chipped edge, they now tell quieter stories, of petals instead of planks. Let's begin with the one painted a gentle, pale blue, faded now by years of sunlight and rain. It leans against a rustic brick wall, but not in resignation. No, this ladder holds pots brimming with daisies and calendula. A teacup sits like a crown at the top step, holding a single marigold that burns like a tiny sun. The paint is peeling in places, but that only makes it feel more real, like a smile with laugh lines. A watering can sways gently beneath, a useful charm dangling from time itself. If you're thinking of making your own, start by embracing imperfection. The cracks, rust, and uneven tones? They are your allies. Sand gently, but not too much. Let the past remain visible. You can mount pots directly or suspend lightweight planters with wire, twine, or even hooks made from old spoons. Next, we step into a dreamier corner of the garden. Here stands a grey ladder, tall and still, with ivy curling up its legs as if the earth is trying to pull it back into its roots. Hanging from its rungs are metal colanders, transformed into airy planters. Cascading alyssum pours through the holes like garden lace, while petunias bloom from a rust-flecked bucket placed with care. The light is golden, like the hush before sunset. You might almost believe that if you looked away and back again, the ladder would be gone, carried off by fairies who found it too perfect to resist. The idea is simple. Let gravity do the work. Balance, hang, and rest. Use what you have, colanders with stories, buckets with dents, anything that once had a use. Fill them with plants that spill, trail, or bloom, letting nature complete the sculpture. And then, look again. A fence becomes a gallery, and a broken ladder, now hung horizontally, frames the exhibit. Here, each rung is a shelf, and each shelf holds teacups like tiny thrones. Some are pastel, others gilded. One is chipped, delicately, like a dimple. Inside, fat succulents curl in spirals and rosettes, sitting snug in moss and soil. And beside them, a little ceramic fairy perches with bare feet and folded wings, as if she's been watching over the whole thing. It's quiet, peaceful. It doesn't shout for attention. That's the beauty of these creations. They don't demand your admiration. They earn it through gentleness. They remind us that what's old is not wasted, that a ladder need not climb to be meaningful, that joy can be built from what we once ignored. So the next time you see a broken step, a rusted bucket, or a mismatched cup, don't toss it. Listen. It might already be whispering its next chapter, waiting to be part of your garden story. And perhaps, in the stillness of afternoon light, you'll feel the same thing we do. That magic is real, and it often begins with the things we've left behind. Kitchenware Sculptures. Once, these utensils clattered inside drawers, anonymous, utilitarian, barely noticed. But now, under a canopy of blooms and dappled sun, they sing a new song of transformation, of forgotten things reborn into delight. Let's begin with the owl. Perched proudly on an old wooden broomstick, its feathers shimmer in layered curves of tarnished spoons. Faucet knobs stare wide-eyed as if the forest holds secrets only it can see. The top of its head, an old calendar lid, curved like armor, stamped with numbers long past their meaning. It doesn't hoot. It watches. It listens. And in the stillness of the marigold bed, it invites you to slow down, to breathe in rust and moss and wonder. You might ask, how could I make something like that? Start simple. A solid base like a branch or a broom handle. Use epoxy or wire to affix bent spoons in overlapping rows, like feathers, like scales, like memories. Recycled metal isn't just budget-friendly, it's soulful. Every scratch is a story. And then, there's the bug. Crawling along a stone path, born from rusty bolts, bent forks, and a teaspoon spine. It's no bigger than a child's palm, yet full of personality. Two googly eyes, slightly lopsided, peer with comic curiosity. Is it hunting nectar, following dew trails, or simply being present, playful, peaceful? This tiny creature reminds us, not every garden needs grandeur. Sometimes the magic lives in the overlooked. Old nails, broken handles, scratched spoons, Now look again at that glorious flower. It grows not from soil, but from memory and metal. The petals are forks, bent gently like dancers mid-spin. And the center, a cheerful yellow ladle, catching sunlight like a child's grin. Chalk-drawn blossoms bloom nearby, art imitating nature, imitating imagination. And here lies the heart of fairy garden art. It's not about perfection. It's about re-seeing, about giving objects that once served a function a new life, serving joy. So next time you find an old colander, a chipped ladle, or a drawer of lonely cutlery, pause, hold it in your hand, and ask, what could this become? Because in your garden, with your heart, it could become anything, even magic. "13. Windows to nowhere." Once forgotten, now beloved, these windows to nowhere open not into rooms or homes, but into daydreams and stillness. And perhaps that's exactly where we need to look more often. In the first scene, a weather-worn white frame stands proudly among a sea of cosmos and lavender. Its wood is chipped, its purpose long retired. And yet here, it becomes something new, a quiet invitation to pause. The glass is gone, but the view is richer. Through the frame, wildflowers dance in the breeze while a small bird perches gently atop, like punctuation in a poem about renewal. What once was discarded now speaks softly of second chances. You can create this with nothing more than an old frame, a patch of blooms, and the courage to let things be imperfectly beautiful. Then, we shift to a freestanding green-painted window set into a bed of daisies, buttercups, and smooth river stones. The crystals catch the sun like drops of rain suspended midair. Lavender and wheat hang in delicate balance, whispering stories of gardens past. This frame holds no glass, yet it captures light in the most magical way, through reflection and shadow. It's proof that even simple elements, dried herbs, twine, sparkle, can become a moment of stillness in your yard. If you find an old window at a thrift shop or flea market, don't look through it. Look into it and imagine what it could frame. And lastly, deep within a wooded glen, a rustic window swings gently between trees. Ivy curls around its edge, clinging like memories that won't let go. The light is filtered, golden, hushed. On the windowsill rests a small ceramic fairy, still and serene, like a guardian of forgotten dreams. A stepping stone path stretches behind, leading into mystery. This scene feels as though it grew from the forest itself. It reminds us, the best DIY art doesn't shout. It whispers. Use twine, let the ropes show. Don't clean the glass too much. Let the dust catch the sun. Fairy garden art doesn't require fantasy. It only asks you to notice the quiet magic in old things, and to give them one more chance to speak. "14. Bottle gardens and glass borders." Once tossed aside as empty vessels of yesterday's celebrations, these bottles and jars have found a new life among petals and light, reborn not as waste, but as wonder. Beneath the hush of morning sun, a row of glass bottles rise gently from the soil like colorful sentinels in a blooming bed. Green, cobalt blue, amber, their surfaces weathered and imperfect, catch the light in a way that feels almost sacred. Snapdragons sway softly behind them, their vivid blooms framed by flickers of stained glass shadows dancing across the earth. What once held wine or water now holds presence, anchoring the garden with quiet elegance. To try this at home, collect bottles in varying hues and half-bury them, upside down, in a shallow trench. Let nature do the rest. The key is not perfection, but the invitation to see beauty where others see trash. Further up, in the hush of a leafy branch, tiny vases float midair. Hung with macrame knots and twine, they sway gently with every breeze. Within them, tiny bouquets, daisies, baby's breath, wild chamomile, seem to whisper secrets of simpler times. Each jar is different, some clouded by age, others still bearing the memory of a label now faded and sun-worn. Yet together, they form a moment of wonder, as if woodland fairies paused here, mid-gathering, and left their treasures behind. You don't need much to recreate this magic, just a few bottles, wildflowers from a roadside field, and a bit of knotting with natural twine or macrame cord. Hang them at varying lengths for visual rhythm and let the sun be your storyteller. Then, there's the wall, part sculpture, part memory, part spell. Slats of old would cradle an arrangement of sideways bottles in a pattern as thoughtful as it is wild. No two bottles alike, each one a fragment of something once forgotten. The sunlight hits them just so, casting moving streaks of green, blue, and gold onto the moss below, like echoes of laughter from long ago. This is no manufactured garden feature. It's a patchwork of reuse, patience, and intention. A palette of light made from things saved, not bought. These creations remind us that gardens aren't always about planting. They're also about framing, suspending, lining, and letting go. And more importantly, they're about seeing what could be, rather than what is. So the next time you're about to throw away an old bottle, ask yourself, could this hold a wildflower? A memory? A bit of sun? Because beauty, often, begins at the end of something else. (15) Rain chains and water features. In a quiet garden where time seems to slow, rain doesn't just fall, it dances. From forgotten corners of old sheds, weathered tin buckets once used to gather kindling or carry pebbles now find new purpose as a cascading rain chain. Hung lovingly beneath the wooden arch of a pergola, they tumble in a vertical spiral, each one catching the rain and letting it trickle down to the next. The sound is not loud, nor commanding, but soft and grounding, like nature breathing. Beneath them, a stone basin catches the final drops, surrounded by velvety moss and river stones that tell stories of streambeds and mountain springs. This is more than reuse. It's reverence. If you find rusty buckets in your garage or a stack of unused pails, don't toss them. Link them with wire, no need for perfection. Let their dents and wear stay visible. That's what gives them character. Hang them where the rain can touch them freely. It's not just decoration, it becomes a lullaby for your garden. Elsewhere, tucked into a sun-dappled patch of moss, sits something even more surprising, a teapot. Not on a stove, but in a sanctuary of green. Glass slightly frosted by age, its rounded belly now catches the light like a crystal ball. From its spout, a delicate stream pours into a bowl lined with smooth river stones. No pump, no electricity, just the illusion of flowing tea and the promise of calm. It's a meditation in motion. Who knew a teapot could become a fountain? You can make your own. A hidden pump tucked inside the bowl, a tube concealed within the spout. The trick is to let it feel effortless, like it was always meant to be that way. And then there's the most playful transformation of all. Chains of spoons and muffin tins sway gently in the wind, each one repurposed into a rain catcher sculpture. The water hits each surface with a different sound. A plink, a tap, a splash, together forming a melody only the rain knows. The metal is rusted, imperfect. Yet that's where the charm lives. Among the daisies and chamomile growing below, droplets sparkle like fairy dust. If you've ever opened a drawer and found mismatched spoons or dented bakeware, you're already halfway there. Link them with sturdy chain or wire. Hang them like wind chimes and let the weather play its song. These aren't installations, they're invitations. They ask you to pause, to wonder, to reimagine. Because in the world of fairy garden art, the old is never useless. It's simply waiting to become something beautiful. (16) Terrariums from jars. Sometimes, the most enchanting worlds aren't discovered. They're built, softly and patiently, inside forgotten glass jars once filled with cookies or tea leaves, now transformed into lush miniature landscapes. These terrariums whisper a story of stillness and creativity, of nature finding home in unexpected vessels. Look closely at the first scene. A clear globe suspended beneath a wooden beam, catching the amber of the evening sun. It sways gently, as if breathing. Inside, driftwood arches like the arm of a tiny bonsai, its silhouette traced against a cushion of velvety moss and scattered stones. There is no rush here, no noise, just a quiet balance between light, texture, and space. This isn't just decor, it's a floating meditation. And just nearby, resting calmly on a stone shelf, sits what was once a common kitchen jar. You might have tossed it away after the last sugar cookie, but now it's layered like a tiny canyon. Fine sand, soft soil, pebbles smoothed by rivers, and moss as green as a forest in spring. A single pine cone leans beside driftwood, forming a natural sculpture. This is how you build serenity, one gathered element at a time. The third jar cradles a similar vision, earth tones, textures, and contours arranged to mimic the forest floor. But what makes it truly magical isn't just the moss or the glass, it's the intention behind it. Every piece was once discarded or overlooked, and now it's alive with imagination. Here's the beauty of this idea. You don't need anything fancy. An old jar, a pinch of soil, bits of moss from the garden or even the sidewalk, a pebble that caught your eye on a walk, perhaps a tiny figure, or a feather, or a curled bit of bark. It's not about precision, it's about presence. The act of noticing, gathering, creating. If you're wondering where to start with a jar you already own. Clean it, add layers, let the soil and sand settle naturally. Play with contrast, rough wood beside smooth stones, soft moss beside gritty sand. These small worlds come to life not because they're perfect, but because they reflect your own quiet reverence for the natural world. And the best part? You can hang them, gift them, place them in a window or corner, and each time you pass by, they'll remind you, even the smallest space can hold wildness, wonder, and peace. So next time you finish a jar of jam, don't throw it away. Let it become something more. Let it hold a forest. Let it become a story. (17) Garden signage and quote markers. There's something deeply grounding about a garden, not only in the way the earth holds our roots, but also in the quiet poetry we can whisper into it. Who would have thought a forgotten baking tray, a weather-worn cutting board, and a few smooth stones gathered from a riverbank could become storytellers in the soil? Let's begin with the tray. Once a humble servant of warm biscuits and holiday pies, it now rests under golden marigolds, etched with the gentle encouragement, "Bloom where you're planted." The rust doesn't detract, it adds truth. This isn't a polished ornament. It's a relic that reminds us growth often begins in imperfect places. You can easily recreate this. Find an old tray, sand it lightly, then paint your quote with enamel or chalk paint. Let the rust show. Let the age speak. A few steps away, tucked among soft lavender and tiny daisies, is an aged wooden cutting board. Perhaps it once sliced summer fruit or fresh herbs in a bustling kitchen. Now, it simply says, "Grow with love." The lettering is made in chalk, fleeting, delicate, like the season itself. A ladybug rests near the base as though reading the words for herself. You can turn any board, no matter how scratched or warped, into something meaningful. Use what you have. Let your handwriting be the design. Simplicity is its own kind of beauty. And there, beneath the mint and parsley, rest river stones. Handwritten with the names of each herb in soft, imperfect script. These stones are not there for show. They're quiet keepers of names and memories. You can make them too. Just pick stones that feel good in the hand, smooth and flat. Use enamel pens or outdoor paint pens. Write slowly. You're not just labeling, you're inviting something ancient and steady to be part of your garden. This is what fairy garden art is truly about, not sparkle or trend, but intention. A whisper of humanity in the quiet language of plants. So the next time you see a chipped tray, or a stone on a walk, or a cutting board too old for your kitchen, pause. Consider what it might become. Because maybe the garden doesn't just grow flowers, it grows forgotten things into meaning. (18) Stepping stones and garden paths. There is a kind of magic in the paths we walk, especially those made not by machines, but by memory, love, and a touch of whimsy. Let's begin where stories often do, with something simple and overlooked. A muffin tin. That humble, dusty kitchen pan that once held blueberry muffins at Grandma's house now cradles marbles, bottle caps, and mismatched buttons. Set in concrete, cured by sun and time, they become round, playful stepping stones. These are not just paths, they are preserved moments, fragments of childhood sealed in stone, scattered across the garden like constellations you can walk on. Each button a whisper, each marble a gleam of laughter. And yes, you can make this yourself. Mix quickset concrete, pour it into old muffin trays, and press in bits from your junk drawer, the ones too sentimental to throw away. When dry, pop them out and lay them among your blooms. Suddenly, you're not just gardening. You're storytelling with every step. Further along the trail, where the wild ferns touch the edges of the earth, the path shifts to quiet reverence. Square pavers line the ground, imprinted with delicate leaves, ferns, maples, oaks, pressed into the wet concrete like fleeting poems. The veins and stems fossilize into the surface, catching golden light as if nature itself wanted to leave you a note. This one is a meditation. Take leaves freshly fallen, gently press them into wet cement, and lift them before it sets. No paint, no glitter, just the memory of a leaf, a trace of something temporary turned timeless. It's grounding. It's slow. It invites stillness. And then, as if you've stumbled into a forgotten fairy glen, the path begins to glitter with mystery. Rusty keys, ancient coins, cracked porcelain teacup shards, remnants of another time, embedded in concrete that's as uneven and wild as the moss creeping alongside it. These are not symmetrical stones. They are curiosities, stories, clues. This is the path of imagination, of foraging and collecting, of making something beautiful from what others might discard. Find old keys at flea markets. Rescue broken cups from a thrift store shelf. Cast them into concrete rounds, and suddenly, you're building a path that looks like it leads not just to the garden shed, but to another world entirely. So, the next time you walk outside, look not just at the plants, but at the ground. What could your own garden path become if it were made from memories, from nature, from pieces of the past reimagined? You won't believe what these were before they became fairy garden art. But your hands can make them true. Outdoor lighting. In the hush of twilight, where gardens soften into shadow and the last light lingers like a lullaby, unexpected objects are reborn, not discarded, but reimagined. And in this soft, breathing corner of the world, something wondrous happens. Let's begin with what once was a simple wire lampshade. Time had bent its shape and rust had kissed its curves, but someone saw not decay, but potential. Now, wrapped in strands of solar fairy lights, it stands like a glowing orb between clusters of petunias and thyme. Moss crawls up one side like a whisper from the forest floor, and at night, the cage glows as though a firefly queen sleeps inside. There's no pretending here. This isn't perfection. It's poetry in metal and moss. If you have an old lampshade frame and a strand of solar lights, try placing it gently in a flower bed. You'll find the soft glow transforms not just the space, but your mood too. Then, there's a chipped enamel pot, once forgotten, rust spreading like freckles across its pale surface. Now, turned on its side, it cradles a light bulb. The perforated edges scatter stars across the stones, and dandelions stand nearby like little moons of their own. The beauty is in the honesty. No polish, no gloss, just the quiet magic of ordinary things lit with intention. For a simple DIY, an enamel lid or pot, combined with a solar bulb, becomes an anchor of charm in your night garden. Place it low to the ground, near stone paths or soft grass. Watch how the shadows dance. And perhaps the most enchanting of all, a vintage birdcage, reborn as a bloom-lit lantern. Petunias climb from within, cradled by threads of fairy lights that wind around the metal ribs like constellations in motion. As dusk deepens, it becomes a living sculpture, light, life, and memory stitched together in a delicate cage. This piece is more than decorative. It's a message that beauty does not need to shout. It glows. If you have an old cage or lampshade, fill it with your favorite low-growing flowers and thread in soft lights. Let it nestle among your garden's edges, a gentle companion to the evening breeze. So the next time you hold something old in your hands, dented, rusted, chipped, pause. Ask yourself not what it was, but what it could become. In a fairy garden, nothing is wasted. Everything waits to be transformed. Let the lights flicker on, one by one, and step softly into your own enchanted world. If even one of these ideas made you smile or sparked something in your imagination, don't let it stay a dream. Try it. Build it. Paint it. Give that forgotten object in your home a second chance. And when you do, share it. Inspire someone else. If this video meant something to you, leave a comment, ask a question, or just say hello. And if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe. Every click helps keep this channel and our little creative family moving forward. Thanks for spending time with me. See you in the next project.